All right, so
Okay.
now I'm here today.
I am here to something of an oral history, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so figured we'd do speech and debate, your involvement with it, and how it all started.
Sounds good to me. Just whatever you want to know. Open book, I guess.
All right, so how did it all start?
How did my involvement start, or how did the program itself start, or
Whichever you feel most comfortable.
well,
with.
the program has been around for years. In fact, at McKinley, where I teach, we are the 60th oldest program in the country, and it's been around since it's probably nearing 100 years. One of the oldest of that type of honors organizations in the country. And I've been involved with the program since 1980 as a student, in 81, 82, 83, and then I came back a couple years later and first assisted with the program, and then I took the program over right around 90, 91.
Been doing this a while then.
Pretty much, yeah. Yep.
So what are your years like in it back in the 80s?
Oh, as a student, everything is pretty much, not everything, but it's hasn't changed as much. The people have changed. Technology has changed the way we do some things. The coaching aspect, because we now have, we can do stuff with video. Video back then was different than video now. The organization of competitions is different now because there is computer. Different things had to be done by hand back in the day. But I don't know, in terms of changes, I don't know, young people, while things have changed, young people I think are not that hugely different. The different things have changed them, but education of course has changed. But yeah, that is what that is. The competition itself really, maybe some event changes that students can be involved in. There haven't been really drastic changes in terms of how things are done. Not that much at all.
All right, so who was your coach?
My coach was, I had several coaches. The first coach was a woman named Belinda Menard, who still is in the area. She actually was, at first she taught at McKinley, and then she ended up being our English curriculum specialist in our system, and then she retired from the system, and now she teaches some classes at Stark State, some English classes, and she was my coach my first 2 years. And then she didn't coach that much longer, and then Alan Rubenstein, who now lives in Arizona, was my coach my senior year. And there only have been, he was the one who I came back and assisted with, and since those two in 1981, 82, 83, then I came back to assist him. He had a couple other assistants. I was off for a year. Then I came back to assist him. It's been me and several assistants since then. So when you see that various athletic programs at our school and across the board go through coaching changes rather frequently, we haven't. I mean, there have been like three of us in the last 40-some years. So there's been, I don't know, consistency. They just found someone who just enjoys it. But, people change, people move.
So for those who might not know what speech and debate is, could you tell them what the program is about?
Well, it's a competitive, it's much like track and field. If you know track and field, we can specialize in distances, relays, hurdles, etc. You can specialize. We have over 10 events. The individuals can participate, in which they can participate. Debating events, ranging from congressional debate to partner debate dealing with hot topic issues, to Lincoln Douglas debate, which is more philosophical in nature, to policy debate, where they debate obviously policy. Then there are the speaking events, which include original oratory, which it's more of a persuasive speech the student writes. There's informative speaking, where a student writes something, obviously, which is informative in nature. There's extemporaneous speaking, where they're drawing questions about current events and speaking on them. There's our interpretive events. There's programmed oral interpretation, which is a combination of prose poetry and monologues. And they do a reading, and that's the one that is scripted. There are memorized interpretation events, duo interp, where you work with a partner, dramatic interp, and humorous interp, which are solo events where the individual portrays various characters, and the material is either dramatic in nature or humorous in nature. And there is a declamation, where the students take a speech that someone else has written and they interpret it as they would wish. There also are supplemental events, storytelling, separate prose and poetry events, those things. But that's pretty much most of the events we compete in.
And out of all of those, which one do students seem to gravitate towards?
Oh, that depends on the group of students you have. Some years you may have students who are interested in one event more than the other. It also depends where you've had success in your school. Success tends to breed success, and young people want to do what they see people winning in. We've had success the last several years in congressional debate, in dramatic interpretation, declamation. We sent 23 kids to the state tournament this year, and they were pretty well spread across various events. So debate tends to sometimes be a harder sell, simply because it takes more time in continual research. In the other events, once you have your material, you're pretty much perfecting that material, so you're not constantly doing the research that you would when debate topics change. It's a different type of difficulty and task, where you're working on the delivery and spending a lot of time on that, but you have individuals who are just not fanatics about research, who might not be interested in debate, but those who are, that's what draws them to it.
So you mentioned that you took 23 to the state tournament this year. Do
Yeah.
you often go to the state tournament?
Oh yeah, we are the only activity in our building. We offer so many different activities that has been to its state competition every year in existence. We've never missed a state tournament, and it's been a very successful program at our school.
So on average, how many would you say that you've taken to the states?
Well, I'll say somewhere between low years, maybe 6, 7, 8, and somewhere close to the 20-some that we have this year. The last several years, it's been close to that. Depends on the group, depends on how many you have who are coming back. Although last year, 23 this year was a surprise, because we graduated 23 off the team last year, so we were expected to be rebuilding this year, and we had an outstanding recruiting class, and the people who were back, who did not graduate, stepped things up tremendously. So again, I was hoping for a dozen would have been great. 23 was beyond what we had expected, but it was a very good thing. Yeah. And like I said, it was across the board, so it wasn't we qualified people in the speaking events and the debating events and the interpretive events, so there was diversity there. And we had in the last 8 years, we've had, I would say probably, we did a count, probably sent somewhere close to maybe 120 to the state tournament. We've had 2 state champions. We had one this year. We had one 4 years back. In the last 8 years, we've sent 16 to nationals. We're sending 3, and then we have 3 first alternates as well. And this year, they'll be competing in Salt Lake City, in Utah. We leave on the 11th of June. So it's been a good year.
So you just mentioned nationals. Can
Mhm.
you explain for that, what that might entail?
Well, there are, let me see, over 100 and some geographically divided districts in the country, and the mainland United States, as well as Guam, Saipan, wherever there may be American schools, and they're divided. In Ohio, there's Western Ohio, Eastern Ohio, Northern Ohio, North Coast Ohio, and they're composed of several counties. Our district is composed of Akron, Canton, Cleveland, Worcester, Carrollton, everything just a little bit west of Youngstown and a little bit north of Akron. And from those districts, depending on the strength of the district and the number of entries, students qualify for the national tournament. And then the national tournament each year is in June, usually the second or third week. And it's the largest competition involving high school students of any kind of any activity in the nation. There will be over 3,000 students competing. There will be adults, obviously judges, coaches, etc. And it's a week-long, sponsored by the National Speech and Debate Association, formerly known as the National Forensic League. And they crown national champions in each of the events. And all types of scholarships, etc., are available through that. And there'll be rounds of competition pretty much the entire week. It's this area of Ohio is we're among the top 10 or so districts in the country in terms of competition, in terms of quality of competition, in terms of numbers. This district traditionally does very well there. It's extremely competitive, though. Those are among the best. First of all, some of the best students, period, do speech and debate. We are extremely diverse. We have a whole range of students, but some of your most motivated students tend to do this. And when you have the very best of the very best who've all had to qualify to get there, competing against each other, it's quite a bit of competition. And it will be, the competition will definitely be fairly intense. You have just amazing people from all over, so it's quite a thing.
Do you have any memorable events from any national trips?
Oh, last year we had a young man finish 7th in the country in storytelling, which was a nice thing. We've been all over the country. Last year we've been to Dallas twice in the last 6 years. We've been to Fort Lauderdale. We've been to Oklahoma City. We've been to Phoenix. We've been to, where else have we been? Wichita, St. Louis, Kansas City, Salt Lake. This will be our first trip out there. Nationals have been held in Vegas. They've been held San Antonio. They've been all over, and each trip has a different twist to it. Now, not all the events we compete in here in Ohio are offered across the country. So some of the events that we have students compete in don't advance to the nationals, but the events that do, drama, humor, duo, poi, informative speaking, original, and the debates. We were talking earlier about what students may tend to gravitate towards. Once they've been in the organization a lot, they may want to gravitate to one of those because they want to get a chance to compete at that level. You can win a state title in any of the events we compete in, but if you want to go for a national, a chance to do something at nationals, then you want to do that. It's very difficult to even make. Each event is probably going to open up with 260, 70, or 80 qualifiers in that event. So you're competing against 260, 70, 80 of the best in your event in the country. And to even make the top, they start making cuts, they break to 60. And if you break to 60 from that, and all those kids had to win to get there, it's extremely difficult to do that. But we've had a humor 2 years ago break into the top 60. And then, like I said, we had the storytelling, which is when they go there, they can enter additional events. And one of our congressional debaters, after he was eliminated in congressional debate, or world debate, I'm sorry, entered storytelling. And I think they started off with about 250, and he ended up finishing 7th. They kept making cut after cut, and he finished 7th there. So, see, there are lots of opportunities for you to do some with. This is the first time that we will take in one of the events where we've had state champions. We've had them in the past in Ohio events. We had the state champion in drama this year, and who was also the Eastern Ohio champion in drama. And it will be very interesting to see how he does, because I think it's going to go. I think he has a very legitimate shot at going very deep into the tournament. So it's going to be quite interesting to see what happens with him. And we also have we have the runner-up in Eastern Ohio in drama also. She's an underclassman, so it'll be interesting to see how she does. And then we bring her back next year, and hopefully go even that much further next year.
Have you ever had any of your students win nationals?
No, that's a goal, and the chances, it's like a needle in a haystack because everyone's so good, but you never know. And I don't want to say win, you don't want to jinx yourself, but I think we have a legitimate shot at going very far this year. I think we can win. When I asked him before each of his break rounds at the state tournament, do you feel you can win this thing? And every time before he went into round, he said, yes, I can. And he went round after round after round and won the thing. And the state tournament was tremendously difficult as well. He had to compete against some of the most amazing individual speakers in the state. And I believe both he and the gentleman who finished second are both going to be out. The rest of the round, that's how tough this district, the state is. I believe the rest of the round, the gentleman who finished 5th, I think, had qualified to nationals, but three more of the others who were in the final round had not gotten to nationals. They had not gotten through their districts. Shows you how things shift from week to week and change. It's very difficult to consistently beat people because so many are that good. And those people, and they were our second qualifier in drama finished at the state tournament, where she was somewhere around, like, I think 38th, 39th. It's that tough, and they're all that good. So for him to have been able to consistently win both Eastern Ohio and then to win down at state too bodes well for how things will go this summer in Salt Lake City. So we're excited. And our third qualifier is in congressional debate, and he was the young man who finished 7th last year in storytelling. So we're set with congressional debate. In the event he would become eliminated, in that we have material selected for him to go back into the storytelling and hopefully go a little bit further this year than he did last year. We were tickled last year with how far he went. So we're going to be prepared, definitely.
So you mentioned before how big some of these tournaments can get.
Yeah.
How big on average would you say a regular tournament would be?
In the area here, we host in December, and we'll host maybe between 25 and 30 schools, and we'll have maybe 500 young people competing. And we draw from all over Ohio. We draw from the Cleveland area. We drew schools from Youngstown. We drew schools from Southern Ohio. We draw quite a bit. Typical tournaments could run somewhere around there. Many are smaller. Not that many are bigger. There are tournaments throughout the state where there's only one tournament running. There may be many more than that. There are quite a few programs in Ohio at the moment. I believe it's 120 high schools have programs. At the state tournament, I believe there were well over 1,000 people competing at state. Again, those students all qualified. It's not an open tournament where you take everyone. Students have to go through qualification to get there. So it's this state, the competition is very keen. There are some states in the nation where there perhaps aren't as many, but Ohio, especially the northern Ohio, the Canton, Akron area, the Cleveland area, the Youngstown area, are a hotbed for competition. This area is just pretty much virtually every school of note, every high school of note in this area has a program. It has, and they're all extremely successful. There's some huge programs in this area. And it's very competitive. When our kids come out of here and go to state or go to nationals, they're ready because they've competed against the best. And there's some areas of the country where there may not be as much competition. We compete at a national circuit tournament in Pennsylvania, and some of the biggest schools they draw from are from outside of Pennsylvania. They do have a couple very strong schools in their area, but most of their strength comes from us, comes from West Virginia. I believe they have some schools in the past that have come from Florida and New York. And there's the colleges host tournaments as well. The Ivy League schools, Harvard hosts a tournament. Various other colleges, Wake Forest hosts a tournament. They do that for recruiting purposes as well. And there is, just as you would expect to see in sports, recruiters do come to speech tournaments. They come, they sit up, they watch, they contact, and there is potential scholarship money for these young people. The final round at nationals, Western Kentucky sponsors several events, and they have offered, and they've given scholarships to national champions on the spot. We want you to come to our school. So, yeah, it's amazing what they do, and it's intense.
Right. So you mentioned how there's a lot of competitive schools around in this area.
Mm-hmm.
Which ones would you say are like your biggest rivals or challenges?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting. A lot of it would depend on the event. The schools, and it's nice because things are so well spread out. Perry obviously has a huge program, very successful. Hoover has a very strong program. Glen Oak, Jackson, but the national qualifiers are from all over. The small schools and the big schools are sending people to nationals. Perry is sending people, Carrollton is sending people, Hoover is sending people, Central Catholic is sending people, Tuskegee Valley is sending people. The list goes on and on. Worcester, very strong program. Stowe, Monroe Falls, very strong program. Revere is sending people to nationals. There's so many schools that have strength. A lot of schools are stronger in certain areas. Jackson is very strong in extemporaneous speaking, debate, those things. Some Central Catholic's interpretation is very strong, as is Tuskegee Valley. They're both first and second, and humorous interpretation are from Tuskegee Valley. Perry, across the board, they have strong debate, they have strong oratory, they have strong interpreters sending people in all areas. I'm very pleased that our national qualifiers are going to be both interpretation and debate. We have, I'd like to have more in terms of the other types of debate, but our congressional debates have been very strong this year. We had a state finalist in congressional debate, we had another state semifinalist, and again we had a state champion in interps, so there's some variety there. But pretty much every school in this area has amazing, successful coaches who coach amazing, successful kids. We all bring out the best in each other. And I think that we've gotten better because everyone has pushed each other. And that's why I feel that we've become more and more successful with each year as the more schools become more successful. When I first started coaching, we were successful, but there were fewer schools who were they were the powerhouses. They were the Perrys, the Lewisvilles, and those schools were just tremendously dominant. And we would do very well against them. But as more schools came about, and the district grew, the district got more state qualifiers. We did even more amazingly at major tournaments, and things grew and grew, and it only made everyone that much better. But this area has always been tough. Some of the best coaches in the country from the inception of this activity are from this area. just amazing. The Perrys, the Lewisvilles, the people, the Hoovers, those people who brought those programs up when I was competing are the reason why we're here. They were instrumental in getting this started in the area. If we would not have those people, Louis Matashoni, who still does the theater productions at Perry, he and Lynn Rhodes, who was at Louisville, those individuals started. They were not started because there were many before them. In fact, McKinley has hosted nationals before. Back in the I believe the 50s, we hosted. But we're talking modern day. We're talking 70s, 80s, 90s. These are the individuals who really made this activity expand and made it the wonderful thing that it is. And they're all Hall of Fame coaches and tremendously talented.
So you mentioned the Hall of Fame coaches. What exactly are they?
Well, when an individual has coached for 17 years and has served on district committees and has had X number of state finalists and X number of qualifiers, they can be submitted for consideration at our State Coaches League Hall of Fame. And there's a process that goes through. Their nominations are made, then they develop a ballot of 5 individuals, and then the entire coaching group in Ohio, as well as previous Hall of Fame members, vote. And each year, well, it's been scaled back to 2, probably about when the Hall of Fame was first in its inception. It's been around, I think it began close to when I started coaching. And at first, they would accept more than 2 per year because they brought in individuals from prior to the Hall of Fame. So you were getting 6 or 7 inductees at first. And they wanted to make sure that they recognized everyone from the earlier years of speech and debate in Ohio. And now we're down to each year they bring in 2. And there's an induction each year at the state tournament where those individuals are brought in. And it's in Ohio. It's the highest honor that a coach can receive. And when I was probably my second or third year as an assistant, I was fortunate enough to see Mr. Rubenstein, who was my head coach, was inducted, and that meant a lot to us. And then back in 2009, 2008, 2009. The years I get confused. 2009. No, it would have been 8. It would have been 2008. The years get confused. 8 or 9. I forgot myself. I was fortunate. No, it would have had to have been 2000. It was Mason. It was the year that I was. I date everything with myself from cancer that I had, and that's pretty much the 2 portions of my coaching career. And it was my first year back. I really wasn't away. I was in the hospital for 9 months, but during that time, it was from the end of one season through the beginning of the next one, but I was still able to go to districts. So that would have been 2008. I was fortunate enough to be inducted in the Coaches Hall of Fame, which again was a wonderful thing. And it was, and I had been coaching for by then, it was over 20 years. So it's closer to 22, 23. So it took me some time because it's extremely, it's an extreme honor. And there are so many talented coaches that, I was fortunate to have even been inducted at that point. Now I have some former students who are coaching, a student in particular who has just reached the amount of years she has to be eligible. So hopefully in the near future I will see her inducted. She's a coach at Central Catholic. So I'm hoping to see her inducted. This past year, the current coach at North Canton, Hoover, was inducted. And there are several coaches. 2 of the current coaches at Glen Oak are in the Hall of Fame. There's the head coach from Perry. The head coach from Hoover is now inducted, the coach from Our Lady of the Elms. is in the Hall of Fame, and there are various other coaches from the area who are in the Hall of Fame. This area is very well represented, which is again another reason why the competition is so keen here, because we have amazing coaches, totally amazing coaches. There also is a National Hall of Fame, which again, getting in there is, I've just started to attempt to do things more nationally on the national circuit in terms of leadership. I want to be involved with district committees, do some more things at the national tournament, and branch out to that, and that's maybe into my retirement. I want to be more involved with things on that level. I've served on state executive committees here. I've been district chair. I've done those things. Those are now for the younger people to do. I want to do things on the national level, and we'll see how I'm able to continue with that after I retire.
So you mentioned in there that you had cancer
Mm-hmm.
while you were a coach.
Mm-hmm.
How did that affect your coaching?
Well, it was interesting because in 2007, I was diagnosed right at the end of this. I was sick probably for the last month or so. I was sick a whole lot longer than the last month or so, but I was really sick towards the end, the last month. But I was able to go to the last tournament. We hadn't qualified to nationals that year, so that was the last year that we haven't qualified to nationals. That year, the nationals were in Vegas. And I don't know if it was, but we had a couple of first alternates, but we didn't qualify. And that just happened to be the year that my health took a very bad turn. I went into the hospital, had the tumor removed, had some more surgeries. I went septic after surgery, and then had to be on a ventilator for 9 weeks, 2 months, a little bit over 2 months. Then I was in the hospital for 9 months, had to have more surgeries, but we kept the program going. My assistants at that point did not teach in our building, so the program had, it was hard to get someone in the building for practices. The kids weren't quite sure exactly what the program was. We had that year maybe 12, 15 people on the team. I was able to go to the first tournament. I was in and out of the hospital. I was able to go to the first tournament back in November that year. Then I went back in the hospital and had another surgery in December. Then I was also district chair at this time. So all this stuff was happening. Then was back out after that surgery for districts in February. Went back in the hospital after state qualifying. A week later, came back out of the hospital for national qualifying. Then I was out for some time. I was not allowed to go back to school. This is we're talking pretty much. I missed school from April of 2008 all the way through that year, that summer, a whole next year. I was going in doing a couple things at school, and then I went back in the classroom in September of 2009. So it was a whole over a year, and we had to do a little bit of rebuilding back the program, but the program bounced back actually rather quickly. The year after I was released, 2000, I'm sorry, it wasn't 2007, it was 2008, where we didn't have the national qualifier when I had my surgeries. We came back, 2009 we had national qualifiers. We've had them ever since. So that year that I had come back and was coming in between district tournaments and having the last couple surgeries, we got our national qualifier to Birmingham, and we've been to everyone since. And we built the team back up to where it was. We're actually beyond where we was before I got sick. And last 2 years we've had the largest amount of state qualifiers. We've had 20 some last year and 23 this year. So it's been easy to build it back. I would say it's been hard, but it hasn't. And the success has been the strongest. My strongest 8 years as a coach have been the 8 years since I've been sick. Without question, we've had a whole lot more success. So that's been a good thing too.
So did you say the speech team helped your recovery?
Oh, definitely. The local paper did a front page story about it. I ran practice. I was on a ventilator. I ran practice in the room. I mean, if we had the things we had to do, there were things we had to do. I had tremendous support from the students. I had my mom had passed away before my cancer. My dad, who I was the caretaker for, who lived with me, he got sick while I was in the hospital. And the students they were, and their families were helping take care of my dad. My brother had so many responsibilities. He had me sick in the hospital. He's on Plains School Board. He's an attorney. At that point, he was a vice president in a local supermarket chain. He had a son in med school, a daughter in that point elementary school. And then he had my dad in the hospital. Then he had me in the hospital. So my students were able to help with Dad. Dad passed away while I was in the hospital. So they were a great support for that. His funeral, I had to be released from a rehab center to go to the funeral. Then they put me back in. I was actually, one of the days I was originally supposed to be released for some time home, he passed away, so they put me back in because they didn't want me dealing with that stress. But the students were very, very supportive. They were a huge part of my recuperation, and without them, it probably would not have been as simple. So yeah, that was very fortunate.
So you mentioned your family. Do they have any influence with your speech and debate, or are they separate?
I've used, well, my brother actually, he's on Plains Board. His son, my nephew, was second in the state in debate. He was a debater. My sister was a national qualifier in debate. My younger sister, my older sister, was not involved in speech and debate. My brother was not involved, though. His son was. His daughter, my niece, is not. So my family has been, to some extent, involved. Both my sister and I were. My brother was 5 years older than us, so he didn't, I don't know, and he worked through high school. He wrestled and worked through high school. I'm not even sure how much. There was a possibility of him doing it, but work at that point in the wrestling were his priorities. Then I did it, and then my sister came along, and she did it as well. So that's where most of that support. Parents were very supportive of it. They were not involved as like speech parents, and they didn't attend tournaments and that, but they were supportive of what we did. But our parents, pretty much when I was growing up, they wanted us to either A, be employed, or B, be involved in school. It was not an option to come home and do nothing. And you had to make use of your time. You had to get your schoolwork done. You had to have good grades, and you had to, either be involved in school, or you had to work. There wasn't going to be any just sitting at home. So they were very, very supportive in that. But they gave us the choice to do what we wanted, as long as we were doing something and just not wasting our time. And that's what schools look for now. When you tell these kids when they're looking into colleges, you need to be involved to make yourself marketable to schools. They want to see that the academics are the largest part of it, but you also have to, you don't just want to be seen as someone who just goes home and does nothing. And that's what we try to impress upon these individuals. And that's and they're fortunate, the school that I teach, that we do have programs. Aside from speech and debate, we have an extensive AP program, and next year we're starting. We're one of the newer schools in the country, which is going to be offering AP seminar and AP research, and the capstone diploma, which will go nicely. Will go hand in hand with what I do with my debaters, and they will be in those two classes, learning across the board, not just kids written speech, research techniques, the presentation techniques, and they'll be presenting thousands of word long writings and doing 20-minute long defenses of these writings to panels, and which mirrors what's done in colleges. And the colleges have asked for this, and we're very fortunate enough that we're going to be offering it at our school next year. So that will be a good thing.
Will you be teaching these classes?
Yes, actually, and I'm going to be trained this summer. I've done a lot of research into what I'm going to need to do. And this summer, they're going to send me to a training. We're still looking at a couple different places, and we're pulling the classes together now. And again, I'm not sure if there are any more in Eastern Ohio. There only are maybe a couple, if there are that many, who've been given the opportunity to start this. It's a very stringent set of things you have to follow for the AP to endorse your school having these classes. So we're going to be very fortunate that we're going to be offering it. So it's going to be a good program for our school. We start the first year with summary, a seminar, and then the second year they'll take research, and they can come in as freshmen or sophomores. It's a shame because we have some very strong juniors who will be seniors next year, but it's a 2-year time investment, so they won't be able to be involved with it. So we're looking forward to that. And it will pay nicely with all the other AP that we offer. We offer AP US History, AP Government, AP Language and Comp, AP Lit, AP Bio, AP Psychology. In Spanish we offer it, so it'll be in AP Art. We offer quite a bit along those lines.
So you've been talking a lot about the AP classes. How many of your students would you say take advanced placement?
We just had to, we had to submit this to get ourselves into this program. Of our students, I believe, our student body in general, I believe it's 10% that take the AP coursework. We're trying to bump that number up. In terms of those who are in my program, it's well over, I would say, well, if you look at the seniors and the juniors, which is the grade level that they mostly take it in, a couple of my sophomores take an AP History. But I would say probably 90% at least of my juniors and seniors take some type of AP. It may just be one, but most of them are taking some type. Now I do have students who don't take AP, but most of my strongest students, especially in the debate areas, take full AP course loads, which sometimes it's not the best thing to do, take that many of them, because you want to be able to have focus on those where your better skills, where your skill sets lie. But there are some who will take 4, maybe 3 or 4, and that's quite an undertaking.
Would you say that this might conflict with the speech team, or?
Oh no, I don't think so, because we teach what to be involved with us. Well, my coaching philosophy is I work around their schedule, so I am able to work around what they do. Plus, these things go hand in hand: the thinking and the thinking skills, the intellectual activity that's involved is a perfect marriage. And with this seminar and research, pretty much so much of what I do with congressional debate is this program. So that will be a perfect marriage. That's going to work quite nicely. So I'm not expecting it now. We'll see what it does in terms of my teaching time. But yeah, that we'll see, because it's going to be it's going to be a time-intensive thing. And I also do other things within our building. I do morning announcements. I'm a building rep for our union. I do theater in the area, so I just try to keep myself busy. In fact, I just finished a show 2 weekends ago. I'm in rehearsals for another show now, and I'm auditioning for another show this afternoon. So I keep myself busy doing those things. So that's good stuff.
So do you find the theater experience useful for your speech experience?
Well, I think it keeps me fresh. It keeps me interested. It keeps my performing. It keeps my skills as a performer active. So and speech coaches are directors. A good director is also an actor. A good actor also directs. I also write. So all those things are part of. In order to lead this type of program, you have to understand all the different individuals who are involved in this program and all the different things required. So I try to keep myself doing as much of those things as possible. And the theater stuff, again, it gives me something else outside of speech and debate, which makes my focus with speech debate when I'm working with those kids that much stronger, because I have other things that I'm doing. The years before I was sick, my focus was mostly on the classes in speech and debate, and we had success, but not the success we're having now, because I diversified much more, and I do a whole lot more, so I get better use of the time that I do have with the different activities I work with, and that's been a good thing.
So you mentioned how this diversity seems to help you. Do you encourage it in your students?
Oh yeah, well I definitely, I want them, I do not want my students just to do speech. I want them to be involved in athletics. I want them to be involved with different things. You want them to experience high school, experience all different things that it has to offer. I expect responsibility in terms when we have important competitions, but I don't just want them to do speech and speech only. And that sometimes can be a problem with some activities in high school. At that point, students are still learning who they are, and they need to be able to experiment and try different activities, different sports, different things. That's my role as an educator. I do not run a program where, now you audition obviously for shows because you're doing a performance, you need people to play certain parts. I do not audition for my program. There are speech programs who audition. To me, that I just feel personally that defeats the purpose. It's an educational activity. I enjoy seeing someone come from very low skilled to having polished and developed those skills. That's what teachers do. Else, put me in a professional speech and debate league where people have to come and try to be finished products or close to finished when I'm here, and I'm just showing them some different things. No, I want to build it in them. I suppose now I do place students in events, but I'm not going to turn a kid away. If a kid has an interest and wants to be involved, we'll cultivate that young man or that young lady, and hopefully by the time they are seniors, if not, it's not about getting to the state tournament, but it's about developing skills that will make you that much more marketable to jobs, to colleges, make you better people in general, family, heads of family, parents, communicators. Communication is not something that just happens in the work or at school. It happens within the family. And it's a lifelong skill. And that's, you don't just, and again, that's probably another reason why I probably don't audition young people for my team. You don't audition to communicate. You don't audition to be a success in life. Everyone has to feel that they have that potential to be a success in life. So who am I to say I'm not going to help you make those skills that much stronger? Yes, they may not get to compete as much as others who are really working that much harder, but I'm not going to turn anyone away. But I understand that the coaches who have to, because their programs are so massive, that they only have X amount of time, but I just can't. If my program ever got to be that big, I honestly don't know what I'd do. But that's not my philosophy.
So your philosophy, is it one that's commonly shared among the league?
Oh, well, I think the coaches, all the coaches, want the best for their students. They all have different ways of going about doing that. And you're also working with different students, too. We're urban. We are not a suburban school. Our students face more challenges. Our students in our district, we are at 100% poverty. We have students who may not be able to get transportation to here or there. We have students whose home situations are not the best. When you are dealing with students who have less support, it also makes it harder, and I have less of a desire to turn students away. When you have the more affluent districts, those parents, if you can't afford, if you as a coach cannot fit everyone on the team, those kids are going to go somewhere else to some other activity where their parents can afford lessons, can afford them, and their time will be kept busy, and they will become amazing at what they do. We have many students whose parents don't have that option, who need somewhere, who may come to school because there's lunch there, or because there's breakfast there. And it's that much more important that we don't turn some who, when they go home, there's nothing there. There's not a support system. So it's that much harder for us to turn young people away because of that situation. But it's difficult. The money isn't there. The school funding in the state is not great. It's difficult when you have the poverty. We are the only school district in the large urban 8 in Ohio that offers a program, period, and to be a program that's successful. The fact that we're able to compete against all these suburban schools and these private schools is a testament to the talent of our young people and the time that we're willing to put into work with them, because it's difficult. It is not a simple thing, but if you have a passion to do it, it's possible. And I would love to see more of the other larger districts in the state do this, but where education is today, I don't want this to become a discussion on education today, but it's becoming increasingly difficult to do those things because the people making decisions sometimes are not people who are involved in education. And whether that's right or wrong, that's for the voters to decide. The voters can decide who they want to support and the direction they want education to go in the state. It's my focus will remain on students either way. that's what I'm here to do. So, I do the best with what I'm given.
All right, now you just mentioned the funding. How exactly does all that work out? Does the school
The
pay for most of
the
it?
school pays for what they can. We do fundraising, and we've been fortunate that our school has covered. Hopefully, we'll cover nationals again this year. We're working towards that. It's not a cheap activity when you're covering hotels and buses and registration fees. And I cover a whole heck of a lot of it through my stipend. It is what it is. We have families that just cannot. We can't do huge amounts of fundraising because, again, we're in an area where there is poverty, and the parents they may be able to give us some time. I don't feel comfortable in begging for money from parents who simply don't have it. I also don't feel comfortable in asking for students who don't have money at home to be able to have to pay to be part of this. That's not. It's an impossibility. You just can't do that. So whatever I can do. That's an important thing. When I do retire and whoever comes in after me, I've been putting money aside into a fund that coach, whoever he or she is going to be, is going to come in and is going to have some money, because you have to have some at the beginning. Until you've built those relationships, until you've built up an alumni system where you have people who donate, and I have some former students who do donate, but I put aside some money that coach is going to be able to, 1 or 2 years, depending on how things go. At that point, is going to have some money to get this program going and be able to do some things. You have to, and I don't want that person. I don't want someone coming in to be so stressed in terms of how am I going to pay for this and not be able to get the program going, because to keep the program going, it's tough. I mean, we're constantly fundraising. We're trying to find ways to again, this national trip is not going to be easy to fund, but we got to do what we got to do.
So you've mentioned several times now your retirement. Is that a close approaching event?
Well, I say that within 5 years. We'll see. Now that I do other things, it will be easier. I still have goals of what I want to achieve in this. I want someone to go deeper at nationals. I've gotten a state champion in Terp now, so that's off my bucket list. For other events, I'd like to have a state champion in, but 2 in the last 4 years have been great. Like I say, I do want to see some more things happen at nationals. I always tell myself, well, when I get to a class of freshmen that, not by results, but when there's a group that just doesn't seem to have the same desire to want to continue, that may tell me I don't need to see, that's a group I won't need to see through. But every year I welcome new kids in, and I'll tell myself, well, I'll wait till this kid graduates and I'll retire. But every year, and this year's group of freshmen has just been off the hook good. So we'll see. We'll see when it happens. Maybe 5 years.
Anything else you want to talk about?
Oh, it's just that, again, I don't know who will have access to see this, but on the 25th of April, we're doing an evening of performances. And our state qualifiers and our state champion, our national qualifiers will be performing. We always send students out to perform. We do things in the community. It's nice to see different material. I mentioned a little bit before, I do a lot of, I write and publish. So a lot of the material that my students perform, those are things that they have, that I've been fortunate enough to write and do, and it's not self-publishing. I have a publisher who I retain the rights for the things that I write, and I have students who are, my state champion is doing a dramatic piece that I've written. My other national qualifier is doing something that someone else has written. So it's just, it's whatever works best with that individual. But I think it's a benefit also because they're able to compete with some material that everyone else is doing, although everyone has access to my material. I've had students from all over different parts of the country do my material. as well. And I love writing, so that's been a good thing too. But aside from that, it's a wonderful activity, and of course, every advisor of every activity who works with high school students is going to say what they do is most beneficial, but I really believe communication is something lifelong, and I would definitely encourage all young people to be involved with this activity in their high schools. If there's not one in their school, to see if they get one going, and it's extremely valuable.